There's so much that one person can do. People discredit themselves and they minimize the value they have so much. One person can really change the course of things if they're ambitious enough, if that's their calling, if you will.
Welcome to Back 40. I'm Jake Hofer, and this week we are diving into a larger question about what can one single person do to make the next 25 years of hunting better than the last. If you're listening to this, obviously you want the world of whitetail hunting to improve. And so I asked all of the folks we've been talking to for the last 8 weeks this specific question, and I'm hoping it sparks some inspiration and you'll pick up a couple things that will allow you to maybe be a positive influence on the grander picture of whitetail hunting, something that we're all passionate about if you're listening to this podcast. As you know, Back 40 is brought to you by Land.com, the leading online real estate marketplace to find your perfect rural, recreational, agricultural, or hunting properties here in the U.S. Let's go ahead and kick things off with Skip Sligh on his perspective. Skip has been one guy that has been very instrumental of protecting Iowa, making it remain one of the best states from just the simple fact of keeping strong legislation for residents. And I think that if Skip can do it, and I know he would say this too, you can do it. And here's what he has to say. What can one hunter do to make the next 25 years of hunting better than the last? So not collectively, just one guy.
There's so much that one person can do. And there's so people discredit themselves and they minimize the value they have so much that one person can really change the course of things if they're ambitious enough, if that's their calling, if you will. I think there's a few dynamics even at a basic level. Somebody's like, well, dude, I'm not like crazy ambitious or I'm just the regular dude, but that's all that we're all just regular dudes. It's just like, where do you want to fit into this? Well, let's just say the milder ambitious type that are guys that are like, I just kind of coast through life, which is fine. I'm not making a jab at all, but I just kind of, I don't want to go to extremes. Well, a minor impact would be like, not cliche again, but like take kids out, get some kids involved. We need more kids hunting. We need more kids taking the sport up. And it sounds cliche to say that, but it's actually true. Well, I wish there was less hunters. You don't wish there was less kids that had opportunity at this. Maybe you wish that there were less middle-aged knucklehead hunters that were just there to take, that ruined the resource, that were just idiots or disrespectful. Or that kind of sour you on the sport because they are idiots, and there's bad apples in every group. But you don't want genuine kids with a passion for the outdoors not to hunt. So at a basic level, you can change that. You can impact, like one person could take 20 kids out through the next decade and make an impact on 20 kids' lives, which they'll impact other people later. So there's one dynamic that can change hunting. Getting involved in the regulations could be as simple as who's doing anything for regulations in my state. And you find out who that is. How can I help? And I email into my legislator because that makes a huge difference. I can actually speak in public. Could I come? I'll go to a subcommittee meeting at the capital of my state. I will show up. And then you might be the case where you're like, who's the group that does this for my state? Oh, there isn't one. Well, you could be that person that forms that. And the way you're going to form that is be like, yeah, I do have 6 friends with a common goal. And maybe one of them is that super ambitious type and he'll kind of run with it. And he knows how to start a business, or he knows how to, manage things and grow things, or run an organization, or how to get a group of people together that can get along with a common goal. And just support them or be involved. So you could be the guy that's just emailing your legislators, and I'll take the time to email all of them on these issues that come up. Keep up with the bills.
And I've always been, I'll chime into Iowa. Like I'll pay attention. I'll send emails out. And I'm always shocked by the amount of replies I actually get. And like, you actually, an assistant or whoever, someone actually read my email because it wasn't just received thank you.
Yes.
That's always shocked me.
Yeah. So think about if anybody wanted to educate themselves a little bit, think about what Iowa is doing to defend against the special interests that want to exploit our resource, that want to ruin it, that want to just kill all the deer. Um, we have groups and a growing army of hunters who are like, no, this is wrong. You aren't going to destroy our state. You're not going to exploit it for your little special interest or exploit it for short term benefit so you can make a little money. Not happening in our state. You want to do that stuff in Illinois? That's how it's done there. It's not happening in Iowa. So we're run by common sense in Iowa. And if somebody says, well, I want to take this to the most extreme, ambitious level, run your state like Iowa. Get an organization in place, and it can't be one guy but you might be that one guy that forms the organization, but that organization will start out with like, hey, I got 12 guys on board. One of them's good talking to people. One of them's good with accounting. One of them's a lawyer. One of them runs a business. They all have these different skills. And I would be like that. Like I try and take on everything myself with whether it's a farm, and I realize I can't. There's certain things I'm not good at. Know what you're not good at, and I have things that I'm not good at. Well, I know like within an organization, like I know I have kind of an intense personality. And I might have to even dial that back at times when I get really fired up. But I want somebody a part of the organization who's kind of like chill and like the guy that can be like the calm, rational, and not that I'm irrational, but just different personalities. I think diversity of personalities is huge. And just realize with any organization that people start, if it falls on one guy's shoulders, it will not succeed because something could happen to that one guy. It could be anything from that guy dies to he gets burnt out to, hey, dude, I just had, my wife just had triplets and now I'm travel baseball or something and I'm just so busy. Life happens and people get busy. So it has to be like at least 12 guys that form this organization and maybe 3 of them like go MIA for 6 months and you bring them back in and you constantly grow it. So you're like, now there's not 12, now there's 50. And at least somebody's contributing at some level and just create an organization that can just mimic or rival all the organizations that most people don't even understand exist in your state to do everything against your resource, everything against your regulations. I mean, there is in your state, I don't care who's listening, wherever they are, there is organizations, lobbying groups, special interests, companies, manufacturers that have systems in place to exploit your resource, to ruin it, to screw up the regulations, or just to make just dumb choices on regulations. And they need a counterweight. And in most of these states, they've never had a counterweight. So if you want to make the most difference, fix your own state, form an organization that's very simple. We're talking like, how much funding would we need if we were really rocking in my state, fill in the blank? Illinois, you would need more money because that system's so corrupt. In Illinois, really, you'd probably need you need to hire a lobbyist. You need to have dozens of guys form a group and grow that group with membership. And you'd need to have a budget of maybe $100,000 a year. $100,000 a year. Yeah, most of you guys in Illinois, I know a gazillion people in Illinois, they're like, yeah, that new Polaris 4-seater was $50,000. My hunting lease was $75 an acre. Yeah, I spent $8,000 on this hunting ground right here that is okay. There's that amount of money, especially in Illinois, is not a huge sum. $100,000, a lot of members and a lobbyist where all the money goes to fighting the cause and stays in Illinois and everybody donates their time, but you work collectively, could start to make a difference in Illinois. You could actually fix that state with that simple recipe. Put in a pot, put 12 hardcore guys with knowledge, passion, and skills, throw $100,000 with them, hire the right lobbyist. 5 years from now, 2 years from now, I mean, you can start making progress. But that system has been flushed down the toilet for so long, you're trying to reverse that, right? It's not going to happen overnight. And nothing's a guarantee. And human nature, you can't get frustrated. You can't give up. If you have a dozen guys, you're not going to agree on everything. You have to be mature enough to be like, we don't agree on these things. That's fine. There's 3 issues out of 20 we don't agree on. And one guy in the group might be like, "Well, if you have that view, I'm out. I'm going to take my ball and go home." You can't have guys like that. You can't, or you have to be mature enough not to do that. And if you do that, that's how these states will get fixed. And this is happening in several states. And several of these states will get fixed over time, like a small minority of them. But, you know, so many of these states are going to have to hit rock bottom and, just collapse in themselves before they improve. But there's some other ones that, like, hey, the hunters could get it before it did hit rock bottom and start to just counteract all the bad garbage that's gone through their state for just decades, and they can turn it around. I mean, my loose goal, if you will, if you're like, hey, ambitiously, because I always think of things to the extremes, like my tree nursery, I do everything. Everything's big and to the extreme. Everything I do, or I just don't take it on. But like, if somebody's like, "What do you want to do with hunting?" I want to make hunting better across the country. I want it to be a better experience for kids, for the next generation that come after me. That's my goal. I want to impact the hunting world. Until my dying day, I want to get more kids involved. I want to leave the hunting experience better than what I found it, better. And I have a real concern that, in the last 20 years, we've gone in the wrong direction in a lot of ways, And I want to reverse that. I want to see that reverse. And you go, anybody might say, "Well, what's in it for you? What's your motivation there?" I want to give back. I want kids to have great experiences. I think of the kid that was me living in the city, in a town with, I had a lot of maniac friends that probably got into bad stuff later. And all of a sudden I'm like, I found this little thing outside of town driving on my bike of the outdoors and farms and nature and then hunting. And I got into that. And it was amazing experience. And then my brothers, same thing. They got into it too. And we were all city boys. And nobody hunted. Nobody in our family hunted. And we found that, and it's like, oh, it was amazing. And still, I mean, I can think about it, it's like yesterday, but the nostalgia of that, like getting into the outdoors, and I still like it to this day like that. I still love being out there like that. And how I want that for the kids. They deserve that. The kids especially, they deserve a quality experience, and they deserve for us hunters with some maturity who understand these dynamics to fight for them, to leave this a better space for them when we know we're doing these things that are some of the time that are selfish, that are ruining the sports. Our duty to stop all this crap that's going through and fix it for these kids. It's our freaking duty. And I want to see that. And society will be better for it. These kids will be better for it. And if somebody says, like I said before, I'm going to repeat myself, but if somebody says, "Well, I want there to be less hunters," okay, fine. The irresponsible, disrespectful hunters that are just there to take, fine. I could even maybe agree with that. I want less of those, but I want more of these kids to get out of maybe bad situations, have a good influence in their life, and have the experiences that I have. And I don't want them to get into it now where they're like, "It sucks so bad, I don't even want to do this." Like, yeah, I tried that hunting thing. It sucks. It was lame. They just threw me on a corn pile and waited till the cell cam went off and I shot it with my crossbow. I'm not going to stick with it. I want them to have a good quality experience where, like, this was fun. This was challenging. It was hard, but it was rewarding, and it was a good quality system, and I actually had access to good quality land. All these dynamics. Want to leave this better for our kids.
Next up, we have Bill Winke. Bill has seen the sport of whitetail hunting change, or I guess the world of whitetails change over the last 25 years. Here's what he has to say as just one guy that can improve it for the next 25 years. What can every hunter do to make the next 25 years of deer hunting better than the last 25?
You've got to lock up the opportunities, and that's, you won't necessarily make it better. But let's put it this way: you'll guarantee that you're still in the game. You need to align yourself in some way with a landowner, whether that means you are that landowner, or usually what I've found is that if you work beside somebody, consistently, they usually don't stab you in the back. So if you can find a relationship where you're helping somebody out and you're doing a lot of work and they're giving you hunting access, as a result of that, that's a pretty strong position. If all you're doing is writing them a check, not that that doesn't, make some difference, it's not nearly the same. It's easy to, on a business transaction, to say, well, sorry, but this guy, is going to write me a bigger check. So you have to be a lot more actively involved, let's say, with maintaining the opportunities that you have. Ideally, you would buy. Um, Not a huge fan of leasing. It just feels too temporary to me. You do a lot of important work to build up the value of that property. And then there's, unless you've got something written into a contract, they could just lease it to somebody for more, or they could turn around and sell it because now you've done all this work and you've proven this track record for this piece of land. Doesn't mean everybody's going to do that, but that's the only downside I saw, the biggest downside I saw with leasing. I think I'd rather own something and have permission through however method you can get it. Like I said, working for it, it just seems to pay off really well. And yeah, or you just got to get really good at hunting those states that have a lot of public land. That's the other option too. Is the western states. There's some really good hunting in these western states, and you could become an expert at that, and that would probably prove to be as useful as anything else you can do. But you can't assume status quo. I guess that's the bottom line. You have to be looking forward and saying, this isn't, if I don't own it, if I don't control it, this is temporary. So I need to do something in order to ensure the next 25 years. And, that's why I started buying land. I love land, but I didn't buy it because I thought, oh, this would be a great investment. I didn't think it would. It turned out that it was, but I didn't think that it would be. I just wanted to know I had a place to hunt.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of led to a whole lifestyle after that. That you got to do something. You can't just sit back and assume that it's going to work out, because it won't. Not in 25 years.
Yeah. What, with the farm you've been working on recently and doing a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of heavy projects, what is the motivation for that, looking decades away rather than, next season? Because you're doing a lot of projects that take a long time to have, major responses or positive returns.
Yeah. For me, the fun on this farm is there weren't that many deer to start with. So it's the first time I've ever owned land where there weren't very many deer on it. So I thought, I can take this thing from scratch and do it right, where it's just not a constant war of trying to get my numbers down every year. I still have, I need to keep my foot on the brake, but that's not the number one management goal. Whereas almost everything else I've owned, it seemed like the number one management goal is to kill enough does every year. But, now I can do the habitat first, where, gosh, the deer that are on my farm now, they don't hardly come out of the woods because the habitat is so good and there's so much food in the timber that they're just completely different. They act completely different from deer that I've hunted in the past that are more stressed because there's a lot of deer. They're competing more and they got to be the first one to get to the clover or whatever. These deer don't have any of that urgency. As a result, they're a little bit tougher to hunt, but they're just maybe not tougher to hunt. They're just different. It's a different style of hunting than what I'm used to, because I'm used to deer that are more under stress, where you can get them out in the open. You can keep your impact really low because you're just coming and going in open areas. These deer don't do that. They don't come out. But the whole thing is like, okay, if we do this perfectly. I remember reading Dr. Grant Wood's book a long time ago, and I've got it in the bookshelf here. I should grab it. I think it was Whitetail Management 101 or something like that. And he said that if you want to grow the very biggest possible bucks, you got to have a lower density, and you've got to have the highest possible plane of forage, lowest stress possible, So I thought, okay, here's my chance. On this farm, I have the opportunity to see what can be done. Because most of the people who are killing really big deer that have farms with a lot of deer on them. And we could go through the list, and yeah, they're killing big deer, but it'd be fun to know what those deer would look like if there wasn't that competition. What is possible, and I'm a few years away from knowing that because we're just starting to get those age classes filled now. But I think that's probably my number one reason for it. I want to see, before I die, what's possible. It'd be nice if the neighborhood was, if I controlled more, because you're still going to get some attrition, from the deer leaving and getting killed someplace else. But at least I can find out on property size that I have what can be done, because this is the perfect setup right now. I mean, it's never going to get better, as far as like the density, what I control, the type of terrain that I've got, the amount of food that I've got, what is possible, I guess, is the question. And, I might be humbled by it, and I may come to the conclusion that, that Southern Iowa farm with too many deer on it was better, but it'd be fun to find out. This will be the perfect farm when I'm done. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's perfect as one man can make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that'll be fun. When do you feel that you get to do a check-in to know if you did the right thing?
5 years in. So this is year 4.
Okay.
I think it takes 5 years. So next year, after next season, that's when, I'll have a really good feel for how effective this was. And it continues to get better. We didn't show all the shit antlers that we found. You just don't necessarily want to draw a lot of attention, but it's every year it's getting better. It's just a question of how much better can it get? And we'll start to see that in 2 more seasons this is 2025, after the 2026 season. Check in with me again, and then I'll be able to tell you whether this worked or didn't work.
Yeah. I think if it does work, I think you'll challenge a lot of philosophies and also provide a lot more patience for people who want instant return or like instant gratification of, we did this 1 season later, it's 40% better. And maybe there's projects like that, but also, if it was a 2 out of 10 from when you started and 5 years later, it's a 8.5 or 9. It'll be really interesting to see what the perception of that is.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for. And it's kind of funny too, because in the process of doing that, everybody kind of writes you off, because you're just not killing lots of big deer anymore. And people are thinking, oh, he's kind of lost his touch, or he doesn't know what he's doing, or whatever. And there's some of that probably. I'm getting older. I'm probably losing my touch. But there's more to it than that. There's a method to the madness. And someday we'll know. I'll either be, smiling, off into the sunset, or everybody will be laughing at me as I go off into the sunset. But one way or the other, it'll be kind of a cool experiment as to see what's possible.
Next up, we have Thomas Mlsna. Thomas is very in tune of trying to do what's best by the land, and his perspective is a little bit more focused on that. So without further ado, here's what Thomas Mlsna has to say. As one guy listening to this, you as one guy, me as one guy, what can every hunter do to make the next 25 years of deer hunting better than the last 25?
Well, there's so much. But to focus your attention on the conservation aspect, I think is the absolute most important. And by that, don't buy into the gimmick side of the industry, right? The hunting and whitetail industry is a fantastic thing, but it's also consuming itself in regards to focusing too much on this one resource without understanding the consequences that these other resources are facing. So if you focus on the conservation side of things, focus on that holistic approach, right? What can I do to improve this habitat to make things better for all of these things? You're going to have significantly better deer hunting and ensure that it sticks around. But right now, we focus too much on the deer, then all these other things start to fade away. And pretty soon all we're going to have is deer, and we're ultimately going to have to farm them because we're going to have to provide them with every element that they need to survive just to keep them going. And that's not that's not how I want to deer hunt, right? I want that nature experience. So I think everyone's going to be a little bit different, I'm sure, with the questions that you get, or the responses that you get. But for me, the best thing that we can do to ensure deer hunting is around for the foreseeable future, forever, really, is what we want, right? But right now, we need to focus on the immediate problems we
next
face.
25, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. and make it better than the last 25, which I think we absolutely can do. Is we need to focus on the habitat and these ecosystems that actually produce the deer, and also focus on quality over quantity, right? Again, we're not farmers. We're not livestock producers. If I'm a livestock producer, I'm trying really hard to grow the biggest animal that I can in the shortest amount of time. I still want that animal to be healthy, and I still want my practices that I follow to be good for the land, to ensure that I can run that animal on the land year in and year out for as long as possible. It's kind of the same thing, except we're not trying to make money off of it. We're trying to build experiences, right? We're trying to recreate with the situation. So we really need to focus on the resource itself and what it provides to us, and keep that resource happy, keep those ecosystems happy and healthy, so that it can keep providing that resource to us, which is the recreation, the food, those experiences, all those memories that come with it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the importance of private land ties into the success of the next 25 years of hunting? Because you mentioned handling the habitat, and where most activity for habitat work, good, bad, and different, is on private land.
100%. Yeah, I said this before. Actually, I think I said it on the Wired to Hunt podcast one time, that I truly, truly believe that landowning hunters, all hunters, but especially the landowning hunters, have the ability to make a massive, massive positive impact in the environmental side of things. Literally think that they could have the impact that'll save the planet. I mean, when you take all the private land and the fact that we have control over that, might not always have the time or the money, but at least you can stop things from happening, stop habitat loss, stop development in those areas as much as possible, right? Slow play. So, slow this down so we can turn the ship around. Because right now we're just constantly trading out native habitat for invasive habitat, altered, low production habitat, whether it's a woodlot that gets logged and regenerates all in invasives because of a lack of management, a lack of fire, a lack of animals, whatever it might be, or it's a prairie that gets turned into a farm field and now it's just monocropped in a cycle, which maybe it's providing food during part of the year but not a whole lot the rest of the year. Or maybe it's an area, mixed habitat, doesn't matter, that's now cleared and there's a housing development, or one house with a lawn. It's a big thing. It goes full circle. If you're a hunter and you're truly a conservationist and you've got a 5-acre lawn at your house, you're maybe part of the problem more than part of the solution. It's different if you're the attraction of the neighborhood and all the kids are coming down and playing ball. Like, I don't want to take that away from you by any means. But if you literally just have a lawn because you like looking at a mowed lawn, you can put that back into habitat, which is going to provide refugia or refuge for all sorts of beneficial animals. Depending on the scale, depending on the location, maybe it's just insects, maybe it's insects and birds, maybe it's more deer, whatever it might be. But looking at it that way, where can I improve? Wherever I can improve, I should improve as much as possible. And doing so, that gives us the option. Private landowners absolutely have the ability to make a massive positive impact if we take a step back and look at things for what they are. On the other side of things, public land is extremely important too. So we definitely need to band together and fight the fights in legislation, and the people that are trying to take our resources and turn them into a monetary gain for them somewhere down the line. Sell us out, right? We need to stick together on that side of things. But, I talk about goals all the time with all my clients, right? And we talk about goals and becoming a great hunter versus a good hunter. And if you really, really are passionate about hunting and conservation, no matter what situation you're in, a goal of yours should be to own a piece of land that you can manage and improve and create that refugia for wildlife in these native ecosystems. And if hunting is your motivator for that, that's great. But we can't lose focus on that resource as a whole just because we want to kill a deer. We buy this property and put in, all these soybeans and whatnot, and kind of neglect the other half of it or whatever it might be. we're not really doing the resource a service. We're just kind of providing a buffet for farm animal, scenario type like that. So we're losing sight on that. But the big picture, we got to band together. We got to protect the land that we have, whether it's private or public, and then we got to work towards improving it and managing it for the foreseeable future.
Rolling in right into our next guest, we have Jeff Sturgis. Let's just go right into it right now. Okay, you're just one guy. You're just a guy listening to this. What can every hunter do to make the next 25 years of deer hunting better than the last 25 years?
You could say never get into ruts. Never get into ruts is so broad. I'll give you a couple pointers that to me that are so important, and this has been proven to me over and over again. Let's say in Minnesota, and I'm just going to go off the top of my head. We can shoot 2 to 3 bucks a year in Minnesota, depending on the tags, in southeast Minnesota and in a CWD area. And I want to say in the last 5 seasons, I think I've shot 7 bucks, 6 bucks. I have not shot one of them from the same stand. Had a history for 12 years in Wisconsin on a property. And in that 12 years, I shot 17 bucks out of 14 different stands. I haven't added up the stats for the one in between that I had for another 11, 12 years, whatever it was. But similar statistics. Your favorite stand should be the next stand you shoot a buck out of, not the last stand. Hold no favorites. There's been many favorite stands that I have not hunted the next year that I shot a monster out of the year before, because the signs were not there that a mature buck was in that area to hunt that. That's one big thing. Always move, always change, always be a part of the same structure overall of your hunt plan. It might be that you're still hunting the same area on public land, the same knolls, the same benches, the same points, but you can't just go in and say, I'm going to hunt in this same oak tree every single year and expect success. It's not going to work. Those mature bucks, that will work every 3, 4, 5 years, but I want it to work every single year times 1.5. I want to experience more than 100% success every year if I have 2 tags. So that's one thing. The other thing is you can kill them from the couch. More time in the woods does not equal more hunting. In fact, I would say I average a mature buck every 6 sits, somewhere in there, 5 to 7, somewhere around there. And so by being patient, and I'm not saying being patient, November 6th is my favorite day to hunt. So I'm going to hunt November 6th in the middle of my property every year. That's not being patient. That's just waiting till a certain day. That's being stuck in a rut. Why are you going into that stand in November 6th? What conditions led you to that? What pattern is that as a buck showing that's there? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's September 17th at your opener. It's 85 degrees. You have a buck pattern. By summer scouting, cameras, visual, binoculars, sitting on a fence row watching, that this buck is coming out to a specific food source every single afternoon. It's 85 degrees, 30-mile-an-hour winds. That is not the day to go sit on that stand likely. He might not move because of the winds. He might not move because of the heat. However, 2 days later, the high is going to be 67. There's a major storm coming through that night, the next day. I'm going to wait those 2 days, and I'm going to go in and hunt. That's what I mean by being patient. This doesn't mean that you're waiting until November 5th. It means that when the conditions are right, you're not sitting on the couch, you're going in, but you're sitting on the couch the rest of the time. You're making wise decisions, and you could be making wise decisions all hunting season long. That might mean that you choose a Friday on a 3-day weekend instead of a Monday to hunt, if your boss will let you do that. That might mean that you choose a Sunday evening to sit in your favorite stand instead of a Friday night, because you don't want to bugger that stand up in poor conditions on a Friday night. So, exercising those patience. I love to hunt by the weather, and choosing that time, and really going in methodically, having a reason. Why am I sitting here? I want several reasons why, not just because this is my favorite tree. I want because this is the time of year when bucks move from point A to point B. They're probably on this food source nearby. He's probably in that bedding area over there because my neighbors have been 300-400 yards away spooking out their property. And when they do, that buck moves into this spot. He's moving through this funnel location. because it's too steep on either side. There's a water source over there. I've defined that line of movement either by pressure, by habitat improvement, or I've recognized it on public land. There's several different indicators. And then, oh, by the way, the conditions of the weather, the wind, the extremities of temperature are on my side. And then I go in for that sit. That would be,
What about-
if you can adhere to some of those things going forward,
You'd
I
have
think
a better
you can take
25.
Oh, much better.
Next, we have Steve Hanson, and I think his answer was probably the only one that brought up this take. And so here we go. How can one guy make the next 25 years of whitetail hunting better with Steve Hanson?
I would say, number one, try to bring somebody new into the sport. That's going to help everybody. If you have a nephew, a cousin, even somebody else, maybe mentor someone on a youth hunt. That would be that would make the overall hunting community better. If you're asking what could somebody specifically do to make their next 25 years better, I'm going to say the same thing I've answered on some of our other discussions. It's, up your game. Don't settle for young deer. Truly learn to judge deer, pass deer up, and spend a lot of time improving the habitat. Improving the habitat will yield rewards right away and for the next 25 years. And, not everybody can go in and TSI 80 acres or something like that. But if you identify a need on a farm, even if it's a place you have permission, hey, ask the landowner, that old fence that the deer keep getting tangled up in and dying and stuff, we find them every year. Yeah, can I tear that fence out? I'll spend a couple Saturdays doing something like that. Something like that to give back to the herd will pay dividends to you in the future.
Rolling into the next guest, we have Bobby Kendall, and let's just get right into it. Here's what Bobby has to say. What's one thing an individual can do to make the next 25 years of deer hunting better than the last 25?
Yeah. So, the elephant in the room, I hunt a lot of private ground, and that is a game changer. When you own the ground and you can make the decisions, you have to be able to do that. So maybe my story can be a motivation to somebody watching. So I'm 39. I've used to play music for a living. I dropped out of pharmacy school to come to the Midwest and guide hunters when I was 19 to try and figure out what I want to do with my life. I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad books, and I figured out how to buy an apartment building, and I used that apartment house. And I used that equity to buy another one, and then I got in a position where I didn't have to get a real job because I was just like surviving barely, but on that. So I was able to make some moves. And eventually when I was 22, I bought a 20-acre piece, and it was a stretch. I just did it. And I was like, well, maybe if I do like with the house stuff and I set it up, I could sell it. And so fast forward, that was when I was 22. I'm 39 now, and I bought and sold several hundred farms, and I've got to hunt some of the sweetest farms there is anywhere. And so I guess my point is with that, I was playing music in bars and guiding for a couple $100 a week, and I made some decisions and I changed my course. And so there's three type of people that are going to listen to this, and one is going to be like, it must be nice, I can't do this. One is going to be like, he's right, I did it. I've watched so many people accidentally create wealth buying hunting farms. And other people are going, I can't believe what they're paying to shoot a deer. And I'm like, can you believe what they're paying for Bitcoin? What is Bitcoin? Well, that's what hunting ground has become. It's become an asset class. It doesn't matter. It's not about the value of shooting deer. It's an asset class, and there's only so much of it, and the demand is getting greater, and it's going up in value. So I've watched so many people accidentally create wealth, change their lives by buying hunting ground. So I would say, get motivated, figure it out, whether it's this year or next year or the next year. Maybe it's 5 acres in suburban area that somebody had overlooked, and you got to get in the game. So I had a mentor I met when I was playing music at one of these places, a hunting lodge or whatever. And he's a big developer in Huntsville, Alabama, and he was my mentor. And he kept saying, you got to get in the game, got to get in the game. I'm like, well, how do I get in the Well, I finally just got in the game. So that would be my advice, is just go for it. Understand there's bad debt like a credit card, and there's good debt like a bank. Figure out where you're comfortable. it's probably going to work out. It's land. We've had all this crazy stuff going on in the world over however many years, and this land doesn't hiccup. Especially here in Illinois, it's just so good, and it can be life changing. Not just about deer hunting. So get in the game, figure out a plan, 1 year, 5 year plan to get your first piece of ground. Control that thing. I would rather control 25 acres and make the calls than hunt 1,000 acres with a group of guys, even if they're friends, and not have full control over making the decisions, because it's little decisions that break you. So that's what I'd say. I mean, get in the game, buy ground.
Next, we have Don Higgins. I think Don is the oldest of the guests here, so he has the most insight, the most wisdom on his perspective, and maybe everyone doesn't agree with it, but this is his take on how the next 25 years of whitetail hunting can be better as just one guy doing their own thing. Here we go.
Well, on a personal level, they need to buy land. There's no doubt about it that good hunting in the future, and we're probably already there, is going to be tied to land ownership. You're either going to own it, or you're not going to hunt. And I think even leases are extremely difficult to find today,
and very expensive.
It's easier to find a place to buy than it is to lease a good property. Now, the drawback is that good properties become more and more expensive over time, and it becomes harder and harder for the average person to purchase a property just for hunting. I totally get that, but on a personal level, you need to be doing everything you can to acquire property today, because in the future it's going to become more and more critical if you want to be a hunter. From a whole, I hate to call it industry, but let's just say hunting community-wide answer to this question, we need to be more involved with our game agencies. And I don't know that that's even possible, but these game agencies have become so political that I think in a lot of cases the hunters' opinions, the hunters' desires are not even considered. That there's other groups whose input is a whole lot stronger than the deer hunter, and one of those is the farmer. In Illinois, the Farm Bureau is the most powerful lobby in the state. I think that the hunters and the farmers need to get together and find solutions to some of these deer management issues. The farmers, they want every deer dead during the growing season, but then in the fall, they want to lease out their hunting land to whoever, including non-residents, without any sort of government oversight. But yet then in the summer, they want that government to provide them these nuisance tags so they can go out there and indiscriminately shoot deer on nuisance permits. I think the solution there, and I'm not pointing the finger at farmers, I'm not pointing the finger at deer hunters. What I'm saying is the farmers and the deer hunters need to come together. They need to work together to find solutions that's good for both parties. And I think it's possible. I think to this point, farmers and hunters on the political side of the spectrum anyway have kind of been at odds. They've wanted different things or have been on different sides of various issues. And I think that if they came together and each side was able to hear the other side out and come to a better understanding of the other side's position, I think that deer hunters and farmers could sit together at a table and come up with some common sense solutions that benefits everyone. I don't know if that's possible in today's political climate, especially in a state like Illinois with our dirty, corrupt politics. But if it's ever going to happen in Illinois, it's got to happen hand in hand with the Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau gets on board with some solutions, then I think it could be pushed through the legislature. But without the Farm Bureau support, I don't think good deer management practices are ever going to happen.
Do you think good deer management practices are a large enough group for people that care? Because you see people debate about, man, if Illinois went to $1 state, Illinois doesn't have to go to a $1 state. You just shoot $1, I'm still going to shoot 2. That's an argument that I have actually seen verbatim, unfortunately on Facebook. But the thought process, or my question is, the people that really want best for the resource, best for the opportunity, it's the industry and the whitetail commercialization is based off of big deer. It's not off of immature deer.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a larger group of hunters, not as serious, that don't care about that. And so how do you, within, you have the farmers and hunters, but then you break down the hunting side, and it's fragmented pretty drastically.
And that's the whole problem. I mean, there's been groups in the past in Illinois tried to represent the hunters, tried to bring them all together and represent them all. And it's been impossible. I've been a part of a couple of those groups, and been some very serious deer hunters, very well-intentioned deer hunters on board as well. But as soon as you throw an idea out to the public, I don't care how good the idea is. You could throw out the idea that you found the cure for cancer, and somebody's going to hate it. The drug company's going to hate it because now you just took away their opportunity to make a profit from treating cancer. And it's the same way with deer hunting. It doesn't matter what idea you throw out to the deer hunting community, there's going to be a sizable percentage against that, whatever that idea is. And that keeps us divided. And the only reason that our deer herd has fallen apart in this state and in other states is because the deer hunters have been so divided. If you go to Ohio and look at the topic of baiting deer, they're allowed to put bait piles out throughout season. There's that faction of deer hunters that are totally for it, and there's another group that's totally against it. And as long as those two groups are divided, they're never going to come to a consensus. And I think the issue that I've seen in Illinois is the people that are the loudest when an idea is presented are the people that do the least. They do nothing but get on social media and complain about another group, another hunting group. And all the DNR has to do to the legislators is say, look, these guys, here's our side of the issue. And we got all these guys supporting our side.
Very uniformed.
Exactly. And so they've always, no matter which side they take, they've always got a sizable group on their side. And hunters have always been divided. They're always going to be divided. There's no way to unite them. Absolutely no way. The only way to address this situation is for the serious hunters who care about the resource. And too many deer hunters don't care about the resource. All they care about is their own personal situation. I don't have a place to hunt, blah, blah, blah. I want to shoot deer with a bazooka, so let's make that legal, no matter what it does to the resource. That's what's ruined this resource. And we need to bring the hunters and the farmers together, get the Farm Bureau behind us, and then we could institute some positive change.
So what would you say to the person that says, I love deer hunting, but I'll never spend money to buy a piece of ground to hunt deer. I'm going to hunt public. I'm going to hunt permission. The day I have to pay to hunt is the day I stop hunting. I've heard that before.
Yeah, I have too. And I got news for those folks. The day's coming where they're not going to be hunting. Like it or not, hunting is becoming a rich man's sport in this country. And I don't like it personally because I was once that kid that didn't have two nickels to rub together. I'm the kid that, and even not just a kid, this was into my adult years. I couldn't afford the cheapest lease. I couldn't afford $100 a year for a lease. I grew up, my wife and I, when we were first married even, we had our electricity shut off numerous times. I've documented that or told that story on podcasts and seminars. And so I understand the plight of the guy in that situation. I don't want hunting to become a rich man's sport because if it was a rich man's sport when I was young, I would never have been able to partake in it. So I don't ever want that to happen. But that's the road we're headed on. It's already there to some degree, but it's only going to get worse. It's going to get to the point where you own land or you don't hunt. I think even the leasing thing, more and more ground that would be leased is being bought up by deer hunters to manage. And I've said it before, a big reason for that is because of the management on the statewide level. The state has done such a poor job managing for quality. They manage for numbers. They don't manage for quality. They want to, and I was actually sitting in on a meeting where a DNR rep was there, and he specifically said, the way we manage is we see our herd at a certain number early in the fall after the does have had their fawns and raised them in the summer. We want to bring that number down to this number, and we don't care how it's done. We don't care if they're shot with guns or bows or hit by cars, or we don't care. We want this number to become this number. And we don't care which deer gets shot. We don't care if they shoot all does or all bucks, or we don't care if they shoot fawns. We just want this number to become this number. And that's a terrible way to manage a resource, a big game herd.
Yeah.
And no matter if we're talking deer or bighorn sheep, that's a terrible way to manage a big game herd. And that's exactly what's being done. And, it wouldn't take that many regulation changes to make Illinois the best state in the whole country for deer. Once again, we were there. We blew Iowa away at one point, and we could get back there. And it doesn't take much. And the thing that the state doesn't realize, the legislature doesn't realize, is that the value in our deer herd is not by the numbers of deer we have. People aren't coming here to hunt Illinois because we have lots of deer. They're
Big
coming
does.
here. They're coming here because of the size of the bucks that we used to have. Illinois is living on its past reputation. Hunters are coming to Illinois because of what Illinois was 20, 30 years ago. And we're living on our past reputation. Those of us serious about it and who live here know that it gets worse every year. This year is worse than it was last year. Last year was worse than the year before it. We're on a downhill slide, and it's not turning around. I hate to say it, it's not turning around.
What can one person do? What can one guy do?
Oh, one guy can't do much, but I guess it starts with one person. One person needs to organize, and one person needs to get the Farm Bureau, and since they represent the farmers, they need to get the Farm Bureau at a table with a couple of deer hunters that totally understand deer management. Not some guy that's looking to shoot more deer. Not some guy that's looking to legalize another weapon because he likes some, crazy, strange weapon that shouldn't even be legal. If you look at Illinois, what have they done in the past 20 years? They've legalized crossbows. First, it was just for disabled, and then they made it what? It was only after a certain time. And then I think it was you had to be 60 years or older, and you could use a crossbow. And it was just a way to get their foot in the door. They knew all along what they was going to do, but they didn't want to do it all at once. They wanted to do it a little bit at a time so that we didn't scream too loud.
Yeah.
And so then they made the crossbow legal during the entire archery season, and that was the last straw. And I've said it before, I'm not against crossbows. I think they ought to have their own season. I don't think they should be used during the full archery season. That's where the management of the resource comes in. And you can look at the firearms side. They've started allowing rifles to be used during the Illinois firearms season, which was not used before. They've expanded seasons. They've created all these extra seasons. So the last weekend of the season, if you got any leftover tag, you can go out and shoot does. I think with just about any weapon, can't you? You can use guns or bows or whatever. And it's all about killing more with more different weapons. And there's never been anything to address the biological side, to keep those sex ratios, the buck-doe ratios in line. There's never been anything to improve the age structure of the herd. All the regulation changes have been about killing more, kill, and indiscriminately. It doesn't matter which deer you kill. That's been the management philosophy of the Illinois DNR for the past 30 years. And I keep repeating myself, but we've got to get the Farm Bureau and the deer hunters sitting at the same table to come up with solutions that benefit both sides of that table. And when we do that, we can all start moving forward.
You mentioned you've never killed more than 2 bucks in a year. Probably best for the resource. So do you think every hunter could not think selfishly about themselves, but think what can they do best for the resource?
Well, I think that asking every deer hunter to do what's right for the resource is a big ask that's never going to happen. And I don't think, I'm not being pessimistic here. I'm being realistic based on my observations from the last 48 years. I think deer hunters as a whole are a very selfish lot. All they care about is themselves. Do I have a place to hunt? They don't care about their kids and their grandkids that aren't even born yet. Do I have a place to hunt this season? They don't care about the management of the deer herd. You can't even get guys to let young bucks go. They will shoot a young buck year after year, cut the antlers off, and throw them out in the garage, and then the dog ends up running off with them and chewing them up. Why couldn't they let that deer go and shoot a doe to get the buck-doe ratio more in line? The average deer hunter does not care about the proper management of the resource. And I hate to say it, but it's the truth.
And last but not least, we have Mark Kenyon. Mark has been very instrumental of trying to be a voice in the world of conservation. And here's what he has to say. Here we go. You, me, one guy listening to this podcast. What can one person do to make the next 25 years of deer hunting better than the last 25 years?
That's a big question. There are so many different specifics to this, but I think the generality, like the big picture answer that I would give, is to zoom out beyond the self, but take ownership as an individual. So by that, I mean, I think if we want to make the next 25 years of deer hunting better than the last, it's going to require, or I'll speak for myself, rather than telling anyone else what they should do. I think that for me to do that, I need to stop thinking about just what would make my deer hunting better, and instead think about what I could do to make everyone's deer hunting better and the situation better as a whole. By that, I mean, what are the actions that I can take as an individual that will make sure that we have the opportunity to hunt, the right to hunt, and the resources to do so? So how do we make sure that there are thriving wildlife populations and that there are healthy habitats in open space and access to them? And I think it's about having that view beyond you. It's about having a long-term view. It's about like thinking about not just, again, what's going to impact me, but how does this impact my kids and their friends and the rest of that next generation? And so there's a couple different ways to do this. And the key thing is like taking ownership, I think. I think hoping and wishing somebody else will do it is a recipe for nothing happening. Complaining on social media, talking about how politicians suck all the time, like all of that stuff by itself, not going to achieve anything. Complaining about the DNR, not going to achieve anything. So my approach is twofold. One, I'm going to do real dirt on my hands action to make tangible, real impact on the ground, on the landscape, in any way I can. So on the properties that I have influence over and manage, I'm going to do whatever I can to improve the landscape for all wildlife. I think it's really important for me personally to remember that you can't look at the natural world as like a species by species thing. What impacts deer, like maybe deer are what we're most excited about, but deer are tied to vegetation, which are tied to bugs, which are tied to birds, which are tied to small mammals, which are tied to dirt, which are tied to all of these different things. You know, there's this famous quote from, I think, John Muir that says something like, pull at any one thread in the world and you'll find it connected to everything else. Truly, everything out there is intertwined. And so I personally am trying to zoom out when I look at the landscapes that I have influence over and try to make improvements and to make land management decisions that are good, not just for, will I kill at 150, but are like, hey, what's the best thing for all of the wildlife out here? What's the best thing for the health of this native ecosystem? So how can I make decisions when I'm trying to improve the timber or improve the food or improve, early successional habitat so that I do something that improves my deer hunting opportunities, but it's also good for upland birds. And it's also good for songbirds and the insects and butterflies and everything else out here. Because if you do that, you have all of these trickle-down effects that are much more long-lasting. If you're helping everything, it's going to come back and help your deer hunting. It's going to come back and help your deer, turkeys, etc. So I'm going to do anything I can on the lands that I manage to make tangible, real impact right now. I'm going to go and also do the same things where possible on public lands, because that public land access is incredibly important, not just for me personally, but also for the future of hunting, because access is getting harder and harder. New hunters increasingly need public land to get started. If we don't have quality public land and healthy habitat out there, those new hunters aren't going to stick with it. They're not going to get involved in this thing. They're not going to care about this thing. They're not going to advocate for this thing. So I'm volunteering on public lands to try to improve access, opportunity, habitat out there as well. It's all connected again, right? There's spillover from private land to public land to private land. It's important to remember that wildlife is a public resource, right? So whether it's whoever's property it's on, it is a public resource managed in the trust of the public for us. It's managed by the state for us, the people. So I'm doing what I can in a tangible, real way. on top of that, I am also trying to be educated and active when it comes to advocating these things at a high level. Because there's like stuff we can do as individuals on the ground, but then there's also decisions made by the federal government or the state wild, fish and game agencies, or the different land management agencies. There's all these different groups that manage our resources, whether it be our public wildlife resource or be public lands, or even, these agencies that help incentivize and manage private land conservation, right? Farm bill stuff, all that. So all of those things have a huge impact on our hunting opportunities, on the habitat quality, on the future of wildlife, deer, all these different things. And it's easy to think that that is all outside of our control and just all dealt with by some boogeyman in Washington, D.C. And maybe that's the case sometimes. But if you are not participating in that process, you're just as much kind of at fault as anyone up there who is making the decisions. If you are standing outside of it completely and ignoring it or pretending it's not happening or not in some way speaking up about it, how can you complain about it? So I think just as important as like working the ground yourself is working whatever you're working the grounds and the clouds. I don't know, the ground and the clouds, like advocacy, calling your elected officials, going to natural resource commission meetings of your state, speaking to your state game agency, making sure that they understand what's happening in your neck of the woods or understanding the needs and desires or challenges of the bow hunting community or the waterfowl community or what's going on with turkeys or, engagement, advocacy, having a voice, all that stuff really, really matters. In the hunting and fishing community, when we all kind of recognize issues and we stand up and speak out together, we really can change things. But most of the time, our community is so focused on just doing our own thing that we generally don't get involved in that. And that's a mistake for the future, because in the future, there's so many other pressures. There's so many other things going on right now that impact hunting and fishing in the outdoors and deer, but are being decided on by people who have no connection to it and really don't care about it because they're worried about totally different things. They have other priorities, perspectives. It's like a foreign concept to them. We are the folks who understand it, who live it, who really deeply care about it. But we're a small slice of the population, 4% or something like that. So if we don't make a concerted effort to be really active and really engaged, this stuff will just be completely off the radar of the people who are 96% of the nation and very easily could vote against us or just do something out of total disregard that has huge ramifications for the next 25 years. So we got to do the work on the ground. We got to do the work in the halls and the capitals and at the Zoom meeting, commission meeting, whatever it is. Like, we need to be active across all fronts. If we do that, maybe the biggest thing here is this. I think for a long time, hunters and anglers have thought, buy the license, I did my part. Now I'm going to go do my thing, have fun. That used to be enough to check the box. It's like, I'm a hunter, I'm a conservationist, I bought my license, I've made that contribution. I don't think that's going to be enough if we want to keep this stuff around for the next 25 years. I think also when you say, okay, I'm a hunter and I want to go kill deer, whether or not we want this to be the case is kind of the reality moving forward. You also are going to have to become an advocate, whether that be with your hands or with your voice. We have to work for these things if we want the next 25 years to be better, because there's so many other things that are coming at us that are trying to take that away, whether it be attacks on the rights to hunt or just all of these pressures on land and habitat disappearing, or the many other things that are impacting wildlife, disease, go on and on. So we simply have to be engaged if we want to keep this around.
I think that's a sobering response there, and should be something for everyone to have a plan of attack as one person, because I think that collectively there's a lot of impact that can be done. And I think that there's obviously some division in some different styles of hunting and what people think, but I think overall we all want the resource to be better. I think everyone wants that. And so that's the roadmap to at least get pointed in the right direction. And that concludes the Back 40 mini-series. And so I appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed diving into all these questions with so many people I have so much respect for, and getting to learn firsthand and catching up with all those different folks. So I appreciate the opportunity. I hope everyone really enjoyed it. And there's so many more now what's, whitetail dilemmas, and so many other questions that happen every single day throughout the whole year. So I just want to say thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. I appreciate you spearheading this. I'm so excited to go back and listen to everybody else's answers. And I think this is going to be a format that folks are really going to learn from. And they're going to want more, Jake.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
Speaking of, hopefully, folks, you are not sick of hearing Jake, because there's more of Jake to come this year on Wired to Hunt. Hopefully, you're aware of our Rut Fresh Radio mini series, in which we get in-season reports from deer hunters all across the country on what's happening out there every single week. And this year, Jake, you are hosting Rut Fresh. I'm excited about that. Thanks for taking up the mantle.
Yeah.
Are you ready for that?
I'm ready or not, here I come. I think it's a great format, and it's fun to hear what's happening all across the country. And I think there's a lot of value for people to get a really concise idea of, okay, this guy from Michigan, I'm from Michigan. This is what his plan is for the next couple of days. This is what he's anticipating. This is what he saw 2 days ago, and I'm hunting tomorrow. I think there's a lot of value, and it's going to be fun. I live in my own little echo chamber with my own friends, and just doing my own Rut Fresh and where I'm at. And it'll be fun to expand that and learn more from a lot of different people. So I'm really looking forward to it. And fall's going to fly by, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, so that's going to be every Wednesday, basically from here on out through the end of the season. Rut Fresh Radio with Jake Hofer.
There you guys have it. I hope you enjoyed the Back 40 series. I really appreciated all the guests that took the time to answer each and every question here. We had the bonus episode on the Whitetail podcast that is live, that was back when we launched this series, and it's been a lot of fun. I hope you guys have got some key pieces of insight as we roll into the season. Each week was developed to have an approach that likely everyone is facing to some capacity. Maybe it's the field food plots. We still haven't had much rain. Maybe you got access to a new area. All of these different things and different challenges we face as we build up to the season. I hope everyone got 1 or 2 things that they can keep in the back of their mind to have a better whitetail season this upcoming year. And next week, we're going to be kicking off Rut Fresh. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone that tuned in on the Back 40 series, and we'll see you.